After months of waiting to see where Aaron Rodgers would land, news came out yesterday that the Pittsburgh Steelers will be signing Aaron Rodgers. Now the question becomes, will we see the Aaron Rodgers from early in his career? Will he look like he did last year with the Jets, going 5-12? Or will this be an opportunity for Rodgers to showcase the things that we grew so accustomed to seeing times earlier in his career with a more stable situation with Mike Tomlin in a top-tier Pittsburgh Steelers defense? What is up, everybody? I brought on my friend Tim Armstrong, Cowboys fan. Important to note that part. But I had texted you, what was that, like a month or two ago, that I texted you that we should do a video whenever Aaron Rodgers signs?
Yeah, it's funny because I was sharing that with Rob yesterday. I was like, yeah, the Aaron Rodgers news finally broke, so Luke and I can finally do that video. And yeah, it was probably April or March. I can't even remember now.
Yeah, because it's taken a long time for the signing to happen, which I feel like it makes sense just because last year Rodgers was, at those different practices for a while, and he skipped mandatory minicamp, I think, and went to Egypt, and then, a lot of people didn't like that, so I bet he was waiting until he was ready to be committed to the Steelers. But anyways, so what's your overall takeaway on Rodgers to the Steelers?
Yeah, so kind of to play off of that point that you just made, because I even went back to Aaron Rodgers. He didn't want it to be referred to Aaron Rodgers' mentor when they were playing together, but even Brett Favre, like when he joined the Vikings late in his career, he didn't do it until like August. So to your point, a lot of people kind of made a big hoopla about it, but I think the timing is good because he can get in there, mandatory mini camp before they break for a month and then get into camp. And I think really that's the most important thing because each NFL team, it's like certain guys are in, certain guys are out for like the OTAs. It's just kind of like to the players choosing. But I'm sure Rodgers was, getting ready. Obviously, he threw with DK Metcalf. So they were doing some bonding there at UCLA during the offseason. But I'm intrigued by this, Luke, honestly, because I was looking at the stats and the Steelers, they were a middle of the pack offense last year with Russell Wilson. And the only troubling thing I think they'll have is protection. They're going to have one of the worst offensive lines. That's what experts are saying. It's going to be like one of the bottom units in the league. So it'll be interesting to see, like, can they protect him? Because obviously we've seen, I mean, just being a quarterback in general, I mean, we saw in the Super Bowl this last year, the Eagles wreak havoc on Patrick Mahomes. He couldn't do it. But how much more important it is for Aaron Rodgers at this stage in his career where it's like he's still mobile, but he's not the same guy, like he was earlier in Green Bay, where it's like obviously he can move a little easier and stuff like that. So I'm intrigued. I think it will be good. I mean, obviously he has good rapport with Mike Tomlin. Like I was saying, he's been building that relationship with DK Metcalf, and I think the AFC North is honestly a toss-up. I think the Ravens, they'll be probably the favorites to win the division, but then you got the Browns. They're going through a rebuild again, kind of going through their, being the Browns in a sense, and then the Bengals. I don't know how they're going to stop teams, honestly. Like they put all their money into their offensive weapons with Joe Burrow. They just paid Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So honestly, I think the Steelers, they can make the playoffs, like last year, they can sneak in as a wild card. And then who knows, just like in any sport, it's like you get into the postseason and you never know. But I definitely think if they can protect Rodgers, it will be a good addition.
Yeah, I think when it comes to my overall takeaway, I think it's like a no-brainer for the Steelers because
Uh-huh.
I don't think there are that many other great options. You could decide to bring Russell Wilson back, and if I'm the Steelers and I'm thinking about, okay, who would I rather have if we got to the playoffs, Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers? At this point, I'd still go with Rodgers. I just think that you never know what could happen come playoff time, and he could get on a hot streak and like show flashes of like the prime Aaron Rodgers. And if that happened come playoff time, you never know what could happen. And so that's why I totally get this decision because sure, there's a chance that let's say Rodgers comes in and he plays exactly like he did with the Jets last year. It would be fine. Like he wasn't his, former self. I do think we have to factor in the fact that he was coming off his ACL injury, and so I think a year after that he could come in and start a little faster than he did last season. Um, but all in all, I think that if you're the Steelers, you're taking the risk that okay, if Rodgers comes in and let's say he's better than he was last year, and even if he's like 70% of his peak self with this defense they have there, with last year was like I think it was the eighth best scoring defense.
Yeah.
Then come playoff time, you have a chance to do something. And I think if they made the playoffs last year with Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, 10-7, that even if Rodgers played the same as last year, which I think he could play better, I think they'd still make the playoffs. And so I think the Steelers are just taking that chance. Okay, if Rodgers comes in and can get hot near playoff time, then I mean, I'd say they have a better chance there than like sticking with Russell Wilson. And as you mentioned, the AFC North, that is a pretty tough division. I mean, the Browns are sort of sitting around there,
Yeah.
getting as many possible quarterbacks as they can on one roster and hoping that one of them works out, which we'll see what happens there. But I think, when you're going against Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, I'd feel much better with Aaron Rodgers there than Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
And you know, with Aaron Rodgers, as we've talked about in times before, if he had the same kind of defenses that Tom Brady had back in the day, Rodgers could have three plus Super Bowls.
Yeah.
So I think the thing with him going to the Jets, at first it was like, oh, before he'd gotten there, the Jets had one of the great defenses, and then he gets there and they're like in the 20s when it comes to defense. So at this point in his career, where he's not quite the guy he used to be, because they have a solid defense, I think you can take this chance. If you didn't have, let's say the Steelers had an average to below average defense, I think they may have been like, you know what, let's just, you know, have a bad year, maybe get a high draft pick next year. But because they have a really good defense and they still have a lot of really good guys who are getting a little bit older, I think it's a time to, go after someone like Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, and I think another thing, as we're talking and thinking about it, is culture. I know that that word kind of gets tossed around in sports, but it really is important. I feel like, going here to Pittsburgh, there's an established culture. Like him going to New York, playing for Robert Saleh, great defensive coordinator, but sometimes certain coaches aren't just cut out to be head coaches like he was. I'm sure he'll be a solid DC. I think he went back to San Francisco. And I think it's with Pittsburgh too, it's kind of like him playing in Green Bay again. It's like Pittsburgh's a really big football town. He doesn't have to deal with the media, the microscope of being in New York. And I think it's New York, they were trying to you know, kind of come out of a rebuild. I mean, they have a lot of good young pieces. So I think that's another thing where, he's going, like I said, great rapport with Mike Tomlin. There's those funny clips of, Aaron Rodgers trying to pull like fast plays on Tomlin, hits him with the timeout, and, they're looking at each other, kind of cracking jokes and stuff like that. So I think the respect has always been there. And I think too, there's a hunger like with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, we've seen these last few years, he's kind of played into this um I don't know what I want to call it, maybe kind of like smug like persona where it's, he's just kind of he wants to prove people wrong in a sense. Like people said, he was washed. He won those, MVPs with Green Bay in his late 30s. And it's like I still think he has good football, like we said. And I think like going to an established culture, going where it's like Mike Tomlin knows how to deal with personalities. I mean, he dealt with Antonio Brown, he dealt with George Pickens, and it's like Aaron Rodgers. I don't think, he comes with those same distractions. It's just he kind of is very blunt about things. So I think that's another thing that will factor in that I think will get the best out of Aaron Rodgers is, he doesn't have to deal with the shenanigans like the media, like New York, and going back to what he was used to for so long in Green Bay, where it's like, it's just about football. You know what I mean? It's just about, I'm playing football. I mean, and the media is not as crazy here. So I think that'll be another like refreshing thing for him.
Yeah, because I think New York has just been very dysfunctional for a while.
Yep.
And, and as you brought up with Tomlin, it's like even if they haven't been great recently when it comes to like playoff success, um, they're always, in the mix. And so that's why I do think it's a great pairing because I feel like there's that mutual respect between the two of them where, you know, Tomlin's dealt with different types of personalities, and I don't think he'll have any issue with Rodgers. And yeah, as you brought up, I do think, having that chip on his shoulder, most people, a lot of people at least, I don't know about most, depending on where you look, but, a lot of people will be like, oh, yeah, Rodgers is done. He wasn't very good last year. And I mean, I don't think he was great last year. Like it was one of his, looking at his whole career, it was one of his down years. But
Yeah.
he's still a guy who's not going to throw many interceptions. I think he had like 28 touchdowns, 11 picks. And so, with that kind of stat line, regardless of whatever else, if you have a top 10 defense, then you're going to be a pretty good football team. And
Yep.
so, I do think that Rodgers will definitely be out to prove something. And I mean, as a Packers fan, I would like to see him, find some success there, and
Not week 8 though. Y'all
yeah, not
play.
against the Packers.
It's
That's gonna be
Sunday
really
night, week
odd.
8.
Yeah,
Man,
now with had to watch Brett Favre come back and play the Packers. Now have to watch Aaron Rodgers play the Packers. So that's going to be a weird situation. But I think there's a lot of possibilities here, and the Steelers know that. I don't think the Steelers think like, oh, this is a 100% going to work out. Everything's going to go fine. Rodgers is going to be his old self. I think they know that there's like a lot of different potential outcomes, but there is an outcome where Rodgers plays better. I was even looking at Brett Favre's stats going from the Jets to the Vikings. And on the Jets, it was like he basically had about 22 touchdowns, 22 interceptions. And then he goes to the Vikings the next year and he had like 33 touchdowns, 7 picks. It was his best pass rating of his entire career at like 40 or 41. So I'm not saying that like, oh, because Brett Favre did that, Aaron Rodgers is going to do that. But we can't like take out the possibility that Rodgers comes in and does have like a resurgence and sort of looks like his old self, which I think that would be the most fun outcome, just like from an NFL fan perspective. Because I mean, it'd be sort of fun to see Rodgers go out and start, playing top tier football again. That would be a team. I mean, regardless, everyone's going to want to watch, Rodgers on the Steelers, and it's what a coincidence that the Steelers and Jets play Week 1.
I honestly think he did his homework. That's why, like, because he probably knew heading into the season, like, oh, if I go to the Steelers, I get to get both of my old teams. It's like week 1 against the Jets, week 8 the Pack. I wish though the game was at Lambeau. That would have been like, a true
Yeah,
return, but it's the NFL. It's not like like the NBA or NHL where there's a lot more games. Even Major League Baseball, where it's like there is that possibility of like guys coming back to their, team the next year, like when they leave or within a short period of time. But the NFL, it's like with how they have things scheduled and stuff like that. But yeah, I think with Aaron Rodgers, I mean, I don't know if, this is just going to be a 1 year thing or, maybe he's got one more. But I look at it, he's probably at the point where it's like, maybe he might not like want to win a Super Bowl. I mean, I don't know what his aspirations are, but he's probably like, I want to end on a good season. So it's like, because I remember him, um, end of the season with the Jets. He was going to take his time. He was going to process things. I mean, it sounded like he was going to play, but it was, I want to come back. And it's like, I want to play like my best football. Like, I want to leave on a high note, kind of like Tom Brady did at the end of his career, where it was like, yeah, he won the Super Bowl the first year with the Bucks, but it was like he played at a high level until he went out. And it's like Aaron Rodgers strikes me as that guy where it's like, you know, don't know if this is going to be his last season or maybe if this season goes well enough and he's like, okay, I can do it for one more year. But that's how I see it, where it's like he just wants to end on like, no, like I went out playing my best ball and I can live with that. Where it's like compared to, oh, I got to hang it up, and it's like look at what I left on the field. So
yeah, and I feel like him picking this. I mean, there weren't a lot of other options. Maybe the Vikings. I thought that like just from a Rodgers chance of winning a Super Bowl, the Vikings would have been the best option because I feel like they have a
yeah,
better overall roster and offense, and with O'Connell being there. But they clearly want to go with J.J. McCarthy, and I'm glad. I would not want to see another former Packer in a Vikings jersey, so I'm glad that didn't happen. But yeah, I think Rodgers doesn't want to go out with how it went with the Jets. Even though he had a fine year, it wasn't great, it wasn't terrible. It was sort of average, but not too terrible. Um, I feel like he knows if he goes to Pittsburgh and he just plays like he did last year, they'll at least be in the hunt for the playoffs. I feel like they'll make the playoffs maybe as a wild card team. And if he plays better football and that defense can like really be a top unit, then they could. I mean, I feel like if you're a random team in the NFL, even if you have, Lamar Jackson or someone like that, come playoff time and you're playing Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs, I mean, I wouldn't choose that. You know what I mean? So
And
that should
that's gonna
be,
be
yeah.
no, I was just gonna say sorry to interrupt you, but yeah, I'll even throw in a bold prediction. I say Steelers get to the playoffs and they win the wild card game because I do
Mm,
believe they'll be like the 7-6. So they might be playing Buffalo or Baltimore because I look at it as it's gonna be KC, Baltimore, and Buffalo as the top three teams. So I would say if they get, 6-7 matchup, like whoever they end up playing, like the 2-3 seed, I say, yeah, they go on the road and they, win the wild card game. But I mean, that's what I can safely say, So that's the Tim Armstrong bold prediction, and we can revisit this, after the season, and maybe I end up on takes that didn't go so well, or I don't
yeah.
know what
The
that Twitter.
freezing cold takes, I think it's
You
called.
think? Yep,
Yeah.
that's the one
If
where,
yeah, I'll make sure that we'll clip this and try to like tag them or something.
yeah,
I mean,
it's
hey, I'll root for the Steelers in the AFC because I'm a Packers fan, of course. So, if they meet in the Super Bowl, clearly Packers, but the Packers are out. Can you imagine Packers Steelers Super Bowl?
that'd be
I mean,
cool.
that's the team that Rodgers beat to win his one Super Bowl. It'd be odd if he faced the Packers and who knows what would
Goes
happen.
out, yeah, goes out on top against the team that pretty much made his career with. That
That would
would
be
be
quite the ending for a career. I feel like if he wins a Super Bowl, the best option is just retire.
yeah.
Sure, you
I
could
mean,
go back and try again, but like that's like the best possible way to go out. Like win a Super Bowl, another Super Bowl.
exactly. I mean, he doesn't need to really prove anything at this point because I mean, talent wise, he's a top like 5-10 quarterback of all time. But yeah, I mean, to end on a Super Bowl, it's like, all right, I can live with that. Like I can go out on top.
I mean, probably top one all time talent wise. But hey, that's maybe another debate for another time.
I mean, there's probably a good argument there, but yeah, that would be a good video. Another one we could do together is, evaluate top quarterbacks of all time.
Yeah, I mean, all I'll say is look at Tom Brady's defenses over the years, look at the Packers defenses over the years, flip those, I think we have a completely different outcome.
Yeah. But maybe I'm biased. I like Luke Beller. He's got to get thrown in the conversation. I've seen him zip the football around at the sandlot. So,
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't get picked up by anyone.
hey, we'll get there eventually. We'll get you signed.
All right. All right, well, that was a good discussion. We'll see what happens here this season. It should be fun to watch Rodgers, but Tim, thank you for coming on. It took a couple months for this to actually happen, but we finally got it done.
Yeah. It's always fun to talk ball with Luke Beller. So it's a pleasure.
All right, thank you guys for watching. Feel free to subscribe if you want more NFL type content, and we'll see you guys next time.